Moving to a house in the country appeals to lots of people in the UK. This is a heavily urbanised country. Most of us live in a town or city. More space and fresh air sounds like a great idea. The trend of moving out of cities has accelerated since COVID, and I see evidence of it in my consultations almost every week. I talk to people right across the UK, and I regularly speak to people looking to buy a house in the country. While buying a house is relatively easy, many houses in rural locations come with unique layouts that often do not suit the buyer's need. That's why people seek my advice. This bungalow is in a remote area of Scotland, and I was contacted by a couple who wanted to buy the house because they loved the location, and who could blame them? But the layout didn't work, and they needed to know what was possible before they agreed to buy the bungalow. Stay tuned to find out how I redesigned this layout. If you are new to the channel, my name is Neil and I'm an architect based in Edinburgh. I've been altering, extending and renovating homes since 2009, and I make content showing how this type of work is done. I offer consultations to homeowners right across the UK who need advice about construction costs, planning permission, building regulations, and whether there are better ways to get what they need from their homes. I'm going to talk about the project, my redesign, the practical issues, the planning and building regulations, and the cost. If you want to skip ahead, there are chapter timestamps below. Let's get started. The existing house. The bungalow was built in the 1980s and came with 11 acres of ground on a hill overlooking a loch. As soon as I saw the floor plan, I could see the house wasn't balanced. There are only 3 bedrooms, but the living space takes up the majority of the floor plan. The layout is cellular, with one room leading to another. Because the kitchen, dining, living and sunroom are separate, this means each space will feel underused. There just aren't enough people in the house to fill up every room. Then there's the entrance, which is a mess. The world's narrowest porch leads directly to a utility room. But if that's a disappointment, just look at the missed opportunity in the sunroom. This view is amazing, but it's hidden away at the back of the house. There's no sense when you arrive that the house has this major selling point. The client had a construction budget of £250,000 and lots of ideas about how to improve the property. They sent me these videos of the house, which they took during a viewing. The photos of the house are from the estate agents Williamson and Henry. My redesign. This video is just a quick sketch layout, nothing fancy, but it shows what's possible. Let's go through this step by step, and if you have any questions or better ideas, post them in the comments. If you want to see my previous redesign videos, I've created a playlist and there's a link to that at the end of this video. I should make clear I don't produce drawings as part of my consultation service, it's just a discussion. I only produce drawings for my videos. My redesign has 3 main goals. To rebalance the house by adding 1 more bedroom and rationalising the living spaces. To create a better sense of arrival by rethinking the entrance, and to make the most of the view over the forest and water at the back of the house. While the client's budget is healthy and they could build an extension, I want to keep that to a minimum. I started by building a new porch in the existing kitchen and blocking up the existing door. The new porch is wide with lots of space, and we could extend the roof over the entrance to provide shelter. The house is in an exposed location and will get plenty of wind and rain. I've used sliding patio doors, both at the entrance door and the inner vestibule door. I eventually want to be able to see right through the house so that someone arriving here will get a sense of the beautiful view at the back. To create the extra bedroom, I joined the bathroom and ensuite together and made a larger window. These small ones won't do for a bedroom. The building regulations require a minimum amount of natural light equal to 1/15 the floor area. Next up, I knocked all the internal walls in the living spaces and created 1 large room. I'll come back to this later once I've got the bedrooms working correctly, but for now, this will be the corridor linking the 2 halves of the house. The house will need a main bathroom, and I placed this here, near the living space, and I also took the opportunity to make this bedroom larger. The utility does not need to be this big, and I will eventually place the kitchen near the entrance door, so a pantry will be useful here. Ultimately, I want to turn bedroom 2 into the principal bedroom, but to do that I need to rationalise these bedrooms and build in storage. This took me longer than I expected, but I eventually cracked the layout. The principal bedroom has an ensuite shower room and built-in wardrobe, but to get that to work I had to make bedroom 3 smaller and use a sliding door here. While this might seem a bit cramped, there is a big payoff. The client suggested creating a frameless corner window here to get the view south over the hills. They had seen the video I made about sliding corner pocket doors by Sunflex, who sponsored the channel, and we discussed using these to form windows that slide away and reveal an open corner. These are complex to build and require a steel frame to support the roof, propped off steel posts at the side. This would be expensive, but it is feasible, and I think it would be an amazing feature. With the bedrooms figured out, the next step is the kitchen and dining space. I think this should be as close to the entrance door as possible because kitchens are such an important part of our lives these days. They are the hub of family life, and a breakfast bar on the kitchen island right at the point where the corridor leads out from the bedrooms makes sense. There are 4 double bedrooms in the house, so an 8-seater dining table is a must, and it can fit here with room to spare. Now, I said earlier that I wanted to tease anyone who arrived at the new entrance by showing them a glimpse of that fantastic view. That doesn't mean they should be able to walk straight across the house, however. I believe in layering space to create a sense of depth and to define different functions within larger rooms. That's why I placed this large island in the middle of the kitchen, directly in line with the new entrance doorway. The living space is up next, and there's a lot of room, which could cause its own issues. The main thing I want to do is create a direct link to the sunroom, so the new opening in the rear wall lines up exactly with the new entrance. This is not as simple as it looks, but I'll come back to that. The main thing this move does is divide the living space in two, because now we have a route running from front door to sunroom. That creates the opportunity to have 2 distinct sitting areas, one near the fire and another here. Back when we created bedroom 3, the original back door to the house was closed up. I cut down this window to create a new French door. I also rearranged the main bathroom so this wall could be moved closer to the new sofa. That's the TV location, and this change allows me to create a linen cupboard off the hallway. That allows double door separation between the bathroom and the living area. Now, this isn't required by the building regulations, but I think it's a good idea. One thing that is required by the building regulations is energy efficiency in habitable rooms. That's going to play a big role in the final design for the sunroom. The existing sunroom has lots of glass. In fact, it has way more glass than a habitable room is allowed to have. This is fine because it's not a habitable room at present. The sunroom is what the Scottish building regulations call a standalone building. The building regulations in England have something similar. That doesn't mean detached from the house, it means thermally isolated. It's how garden rooms and conservatories are classified, so they can have as much glass as possible. To comply with this part of the regulations, the crucial thing is that the room be separated from the rest of the house by an external grade door. This limits heat loss from the house through the room with lots of glass. The problem is that I now want to incorporate the sunroom into the house, and I can't do that unless I address the thermal efficiency of that sunroom. Now, I made a whole video about how much glass you can have in an extension, and I've put a link in the description if you're interested, but I'm going to give you a short explanation here using a spreadsheet. I love a good spreadsheet. There are a couple of things you need to understand for this to make sense, and the first thing is a U value. This is a measure of how much heat escapes through 1 square meter of something per hour. It's actually more complicated than that, but let's keep it simple. It's like golf. The lower the number, the better the score. The building regulations set target U values for every external element of a building, the walls, roof, floor, windows and doors, and the regs also give a really simple way to work out how much glass I can have in my extension. In this case, I'm upgrading the old sunroom, so they start by telling me the maximum U values I must achieve in the walls, roof, floor and new glazing. I'm assuming the floor is suspended with a void underneath, so I can just stuff insulation in there to achieve the figures required by the regs. I'm also going to add new insulation into the walls and above the ceiling. The next step is to measure the floor area, which is 15.5 square meters. Now, the regs say I can have an amount of glazing equal to 25% of that area, so 3.8 square meters of glass. The regs also say I can add the area of any window or door covered by the extension into my area of glass. The existing door is about 2 square meters, so that gives some 5.8 square meters of glass in total, provided the glass has a U value no higher than 1.4. The U value numbers in England are slightly different, but the same process holds true. Just so you have some idea what a U value of 1.4 means in the real world, that will be a good quality UPVC frame with double glazing. Now, the trouble is, 5.8 square meters is not a lot of glass. This patio door here is 6.3 square meters. So if we use the 25% rule described in the regs, we would need to block up both of these windows and fit a smaller patio door here. That's not going to work for my design. I need more glass, and the regs give me another option, the compensatory heat loss calculation. This asks me to compare what I want to build against a notional building of the same size. The notional building can be the 25% design I just mentioned. The regulations ask me to multiply the area of wall, floor, roof or glazing by its U-value number to get a score. I then add up the scores, and if the proposed extension gets a lower figure than the notional extension, it complies with the regulations. To start off, you can see the figures are far apart. The notional extension scores 17.6, while the existing sunroom scores 29.4. Getting one of these calculations to work requires some back and forth, increasing the amount of insulation or specifying really high quality glazing to see if the numbers get closer. First off, I increased the insulation, using expensive PIR in the walls, roof and floor to achieve a really good U-value of 1.2. I then specified high quality triple glazed aluminium frames from Sunflex for all new glazing. This moves the numbers closer, but the proposed extension is still off, 21.7 to 17.6. Next, I experimented by reducing the amount of glass. Even cutting-edge triple glazing is still about 8 times less efficient than a well-built wall with modern insulation. The only way for the overall building to get a better score is if the amount of glazing is reduced. You will notice that this also increased the amount of wall, because the external envelope of the sunroom is finite. More glass means less wall and vice versa. I cut the amount of glazing from 16.2 square meters down to 14, but the heat loss score is still too high. I then cut it down to 12 square meters, and the heat loss is still higher than the notional extension, but very close to passing. I then cut the amount of glazing down to 11 square meters, and that works. The overall heat loss in the proposed extension is now less than the notional extension, 17.1 to 17.6. I left some room for error because all it takes is for a builder to install the wrong insulation or to measure the glazing too large, and the calculation won't work in the real world, and believe me, the building standards officers check when the building is finished. So what would 11 square meters of glass look like in the sunroom? I could divide this up any way I like, but I chose to keep the patio door the same size, and close up the north-facing window except for a tall slot because I like the idea of catching a glimpse. I then had to reduce the window facing the main view, but only slightly. This gives me 11 square meters of glazing, provided it achieves a U-value of 1. To do that, I would use the sponsor of today's video, Sunflex UK. They design and manufacture high-quality aluminium windows and doors in the UK. I've used them on several of my own projects, and I believe they offer a great balance between cost and quality. Don't just take my word for it though, check out these videos I made, which include the cost. There's a link up here and in the description below. Would this redesign need planning permission? Internal alterations like this, even when they include modest changes to the exterior of a house, don't usually require planning approval. Provided the house is not listed, not in a conservation area, and the exterior changes are more than 1 meter from a boundary, then permitted development should apply. That said, the new front entrance I suggested in this redesign would be visible from the public road, so I would apply for a certificate of lawfulness to confirm that this is within permitted development. If you are thinking about doing something similar, take professional advice or just contact your local planning department and ask. One thing I didn't mention in the redesign is that a house in a rural location will probably have a septic tank, and adding more bedrooms will usually trigger the need to upgrade a tank, especially if it's an old property. The size of a septic tank is determined by the number of bedrooms in a house, so if you're thinking about buying a house in the country, always have the septic tank inspected to work out its capacity and condition. It's a lovely job, but somebody has to do it. How much should this cost to build? Assuming we don't have to upgrade the septic tank, I expect the construction costs would break down as follows. The new vestibule will cost around £30,000 plus VAT, including the new patio doors. This drawing shows the existing internal walls and doors to be demolished in a red dashed line. When you take into account the new partition walls, internal doors, new flooring, renovation to the ceiling and existing surfaces, as well as rewiring, new heating, plumbing and decoration, I expect the internal shell would cost at least £100,000. On top of that, the new kitchen would be around £25,000, and the pantry, utility, family bathroom and ensuite would cost around £5,000 each, including tiling, fitting, drainage and plumbing. The corner window is a very nice feature, but complex. Allow £40,000 for that alone, of which half would be the new sliding glazing. The opening into the sunroom would cost around £10,000, and the new French door would cost another £10,000, taking into account the work to cut down the existing window. The work to the sunroom would also be around £40,000, including the new glazing. Triple glazing isn't cheap because the frames have to be extra strong to support the weight. So all in, this project would cost £275,000 plus VAT. So straight away we're over budget. Now, I told the client when we spoke that their idea of a frameless corner with sliding windows would be very expensive, so I guess that will be the first thing to cut from this design. This feature could always be done at a later date. There would also be a cost saving in the sunroom if we specified less glass, and fittings like the kitchen units and bathroom appliances could be sourced for less money. There are always ways and means to cut costs, but one trap I see people fall into when moving from a city to the countryside is that they often expect construction costs to be less, when sometimes they can actually cost more. Remote sites have transport costs to factor in, which don't exist in towns and cities. It costs money to get materials to the site. Labour costs can be lower in rural areas, but sometimes, especially with skilled trades, there isn't any local competition. So electricians, plumbers, joiners and roofers can charge higher fees than you might expect. Let me know in the comments whether you think this is worthwhile. Would you sell up and move to the country? And if you enjoyed this video, check out this playlist of other properties I've redesigned. If you are thinking about buying a home anywhere in the UK, check out the reallifearchitecture.co.uk website. You can book a consultation with me if you need specific advice about your property. There's a link in the description, and please read the terms and conditions before you book.